helping keep modern Manx history alive.
Mr Cretney, you're talking to us today as the Manx Labour Party, I presume, and about the way that future elections are going to be handled. Can you outline what you're talking about?
Well, there's been a review of funding of elections. That was conducted by an independent committee. The governance committee of the Council of Ministers then looked at it. Council of Ministers then looked at it, and now it's out for public consultation. That consultation has finished recently, and I hope that there's been a good response because it's a very important subject. And what it is, it's just to make sure that there will be a cap on the amount of expenditure candidates can use at elections, and then it's up for them to decide how they spend the money. The other thing in relation to this has been there's been some discussion about registration of political parties, and the Manx Labour Party has no problem with that. All we would say is that we believe that it shouldn't be overly bureaucratic or onerous, but we've got no problem because always when we've stood at elections, part of our requirements is that we put official Manx Labour Party candidate on our literature anyway.
Do you think sitting members of the House of Keys should be making these sort of decisions, or should it really be an independent committee that looks into the way things are handled?
Well, I think other than two of the proposals from the independent committee, which were left open by them anyway, they did leave it for Council of Ministers and ultimately Tynwald to consider. And so the vast majority of the recommendations have come from an independent body, and I think that's entirely appropriate that they should look at it in that way rather than politicians just being the only parties to look at it. And as I say, I do hope that there's been a decent response from the public about this as well, because it is a very important matter.
How do you juggle these things? Because you're obviously Council of Ministers and you're the Labour Party. You know, do you go into all the meetings, or do you have to remove yourself from those sort of things?
No, I go to all the meetings, and the process is that if there's anything upon which the Manx Labour Party has a predetermined position, or I as a member of the House of Keys have a predetermined position, then that's made clear at the time. And from time to time we have to compromise. But we have always taken the view that it's better to be at the table and to have our input at that level rather than just shouting from the sidelines.
Okay, well, there's a formula sort of worked out. In your case, what would that work out at, spending per person, if you're going for the election?
Well, there's been different amounts suggested. The Council of Ministers suggested £2,000 plus 50 pence per voter. The Electoral Commission, who looked at this matter, offered two alternatives, one of which was £2,500 plus £1 a voter, or a straight formula based on whether it's a 1, 2 or 3 seat constituency. And the Manx Labour Party believe that £2,500 plus £1 per voter is a reasonable compromise.
So in your case, what would that be?
I think there's about 4,500 voters in my constituency, so it would be about £7,000, a little over that.
And can I ask you, would you spend that normally?
It's probably, that's on the high side, but it is 5 years since I had an election, and I think at the last election I probably would have spent £4,000, something in that area. The posters, the most important item is your manifesto, and that can be quite an expensive exercise. But we've got modern technology now with a number of members have already got their own websites. I know others are considering doing that, including myself. And there will obviously be, if the findings are followed through, the opportunity for members to consider whether part of their budget should be spent on the radio advertising. And again, that would have to be strictly controlled and managed to make sure there wasn't abuse.
Okay, now this all goes back. Let's get right down to here. This goes back to a certain person, Kevin Woodford, I'm sure we're going to talk about here, who caused the issue in the first place. Do you feel, looking back on that, you made a mistake by backing him originally to go to be an MLC?
No, when I proposed him to be for the Legislative Council, there was no suggestion whatsoever of any blind trust proposing or supporting Kevin in any way, and I felt that his external work, where he's always been very good in terms of promoting the Isle of Man, would be something which would be of benefit to us when we need to get our message across to a wider audience. And that's the principal basis upon which I support him at that stage. We move on then to the East Douglas election. I think there were mistakes made there as far as I'm concerned. I think there was some element of naivety in terms of not... Kevin's position was that he felt he didn't need to know who was backing him. I don't think that was the right thing to do. I think it's very important that not only you should know who's backing you, but more importantly, the electorate who are going to entrust you for a period of time, that they need to know that as well.
So do you think that's all now behind us now? That people won't be putting up the flashy banners and posters everywhere?
Oh, well, I think there'll be flashy banners and posters. There's no question of that. I've been criticised in the past for putting loads of posters up all over the place. I think you need to try and get a general interest in the general elections. I think it's very important. But my posters are kind of fairly modest, A4 or a little bit larger posters on sticks around the constituency, just so people are aware there's an election on and it's an important time. But I think in terms of the blind trust situation, I'm sure that's consigned to history now, as it has been in other jurisdictions. And I think what happened was that the situation which arose in the East Douglas made us aware that other parliaments around us have already taken steps in relation to tightening up in these areas, and it was only timely that we did so as well.
Yeah. Finally, will you be putting your hat in the ring for the Chief Minister's job?
You've asked me this before, and I don't think for one moment that I'll be a candidate. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of other good people who will put their names forward. I'd be very happy if the people of South Douglas entrust me for a further 5-year term.
Would you accept if your name went forward?
I honestly don't think that my name will go forward.
I'm asking you, if your name did go forward, would you consider it?
I've always said that I'll do whatever I can for the good of the Isle of Man, whatever position that is. I won't shout for the sidelines, but I will be vigorous in terms of supporting both my constituents and the needs of the island going forward.
Please subscribe to the Isle of Man TV archive channel. Thank you.